She had one rule kept without exception, without negotiation, without a single moment of compromise across 6 years, 4 continents, 261 sold-out arenas, and every room in between. Nobody gets close. And then he got close. Not because she allowed it, not because she chose it, because on the night the seventh letter arrived, the letter that named the thing she had never spoken aloud to a single living person, the only human being in the room who understood what it meant was the man she had hired to stand between her and danger. She did not know on that night that he was the most dangerous thing in the room, not to her life, to the 6 years she had spent making certain her life could not be touched. 6 years before the night that changed everything, Lyra James was not famous. She was 22, living in a one-bedroom apartment in East Hollywood, the part of Los Angeles that does not appear in films about Los Angeles. She had a voice her vocal coach described in the careful language of someone who had heard 10,000 voices as generational. She had $60 in a bank account and a notebook full of songs written between double shifts at Cedars-Sinai, where she worked as an orderly, watching people at the edges of their lives with the attention of someone who had learned early that the edges were where the truth lived. She was not unhappy. That is the detail I need you to hold. She was alive and specific, and entirely herself, a young woman who had not yet learned that being entirely yourself is a luxury with a price. The price arrived on a Thursday evening in November on the third floor of a building on Kenmore Avenue, in a city conducting its enormous, indifferent business, entirely unaware that one woman's life had just pivoted on its axis. She has never spoken about it. In 7 years of interviews, 412 published profiles, documentaries and retrospectives, not once. The journalists who have tried to find it have found a wall. Smooth, professionally maintained, entirely without purchase. What I can tell you is what she built after. A contract, a record, the kind of success described in numbers because the industry has no other language, and an apartment in Silver Lake, quiet street, third floor, the same floor as Kenmore Avenue. She did not notice this until moving day, and when she noticed it, she stood in the empty living room for a long time without unpacking. She did not move out. Every night before she walked on stage, she stood in the wings and became someone else, not a character, not a mask, something built with the precision of a person who understood, at a cellular level, that the only safe version of herself was the one the audience could see. The stage was not a performance. The stage was armor. And the woman underneath it had not been seen by another human being in 6 years, until him. But before him, there was the letter. The first letter came on a Monday, in London, not to her management office, not to the label, not through any of the 17 documented channels by which the outside world was permitted to reach Lyra James. It came to her dressing room at the O2 Arena, slipped under the door on the night of her first London date, in a building whose security her team had verified 48 hours prior, in a city she had arrived in through a private Heathrow terminal, where 6 people knew her itinerary and 4 of them were on her payroll. It was one sentence. I was there that Thursday. I have been here ever since. She read it twice, folded it, placed it in the inside pocket of the jacket she wore when she needed to feel like she was holding herself together. She performed that night to 18,000 people. She hit every note. She held every silence. Backstage after London's rain audible against the loading bay doors, she sat in front of a mirror and looked at herself for a long time. She had spent 6 years building something that could not be touched. Someone had just reached through it, in a city 3 continents from where it happened, which meant they had followed her, which meant the Thursday on Kenmore Avenue was not, as she had carefully constructed it to be, behind her. It was in the room. The second letter came in Paris 3 weeks later, tucked into flowers delivered to her suite at the George V, ordered through her management's approved florist, using an account code only 6 people possessed. The third arrived in Amsterdam, placed on the piano of a rehearsal room at a venue she had not confirmed attending until 4 hours before she arrived. Each letter was one line. Each line referenced something from that Thursday that no one alive should have known. She told no one for 4 months. She managed the fear the way she managed everything, with the practiced efficiency of a woman who had learned that feelings, like stage production, required management, or they ran you. Back in Los Angeles between tour legs, she sat in her Silver Lake apartment and understood, without examining it too closely, that the things she had spent 6 years outrunning had learned her schedule. In the fifth month, her manager found the jacket. 24 hours later, they hired Noah Smith. There are men who go to war and come back changed in ways they can explain. And then there are men like Noah Smith who came back changed in ways that had no available language, because the change was so complete that the man who might have described it no longer existed. 12 years, special operations, 3 deployments, the kind of service that does not appear in citation documents. He was not the loudest man in any room. He was the one near the door, back to the wall, who had identified every exit before anyone else finished sitting down. He tried in the 18 months after leaving to locate the switch. A therapist's office in Culver City every Tuesday for 11 months. The Santa Monica Pier on ordinary afternoons. The specific, disorienting quiet of civilian mornings in his Mar Vista apartment. Trying to hear the street below as just a street. He could not do it, so he did what people do with the thing they cannot put down. He made it useful. He opened a firm. 3 people. Curated clients. Work that required the exact configuration 12 years had built into him. Reading a room before it knew it was being read. Remaining still in the presence of threat, and the discipline of a man who had learned that feeling nothing on the surface had, on 3 documented occasions, been the variable that determined whether people lived or died. He was 38. He slept 4 hours a night. He ran at 5:15 every morning through Mar Vista in the dark, because the dark did not require him to perform the version of himself that had learned to pass as ordinary. His partner called on a Tuesday morning and said one name, Lyra James. Noah said, "I don't do celebrity clients." His partner said, "Read the file first." He read it in one sitting, coffee going cold. He set it down and read the letters again. The surgical precision of someone who had waited, who had been patient across months in 3 countries, because patience was not a constraint to them, but a strategy. Whoever wrote those letters was not unhinged. They were deliberate. Deliberate was the thing Noah Smith had been built to answer. He arrived at her West Hollywood management office expecting the file. The curated, managed, professionally maintained version of a woman whose entire existence had been optimized for public consumption. He had prepared for every version of this meeting his experience told him was likely. He was not prepared for what he actually met. She was already in the room when he arrived. No team, no manager, just her, sitting at the far end of the conference table with both hands around a coffee cup, looking out at the West Hollywood morning. The hills were clear. The light had the particular quality it gets in Los Angeles in October. Golden, precise, merciless. She did not look up when he entered. Not because she hadn't heard him. The slight shift in her posture told him she was aware of him and had decided deliberately not to perform awareness. He sat. He waited. After 17 seconds, he counted. Because counting was what he did, she looked at him. She said, "You read the letters." Not a question. He said, "Yes." She said, "And what did the letters tell you about me?" He gave the professional answer. Threat actor with prior knowledge. Internal access suggested by delivery at the O2, in the George V in the Amsterdam rehearsal room. Someone moving with the tour, not merely tracking it. She listened without moving. Then she said, "That is what the letters told you about them." I asked what they told you about me. He was quiet for 3 seconds. He was not a man who was quiet for 3 seconds. He said that you kept them for 4 months. In a jacket, not a drawer. That you told no one. Not in London, not in Paris, not in Amsterdam, not when you came home to Los Angeles. Because telling someone would require you to say out loud what the letters already knew, and saying it out loud was a door you were not ready to open. The West Hollywood morning continued outside. The light did not adjust itself for what was happening in the room. She looked at him with the full, unhurried attention of someone genuinely reading something that had surprised her. In Los Angeles, a city built on the performance of attention, that quality was rarer than it should have been. She said, "You're going to be a problem." He said, "That is generally the point." For the first time in 17 minutes, something moved across her face that was not the face she had built. Less than a second. Then gone. filed, managed, returned to its compartment. He saw it. He was paid to see things. And what he saw was the actual person, briefly and involuntarily present, before the armor closed over her again. He drove back to Mar Vista and told his partner, "The threat is real. The access is internal. Someone has moved through her operation undetected across 3 countries. And there is something in the history of a Thursday in East Hollywood she has never told anyone." His partner said, "Are you all right?" He said, "Pull every employment record. Cross-reference against the letter timeline. London, Paris, Amsterdam. Anyone hired in the 18 months before the '02. I want everything." He did not answer the question his partner had actually asked. They both noticed. Here's the thing about protection they do not tell you when describing the mechanics of the job. It is intimate, profoundly, unavoidably intimate. You are present in every room, every corridor, in the minutes before a person becomes the person the world sees, and in the minutes after, when they are simply exhausted, quiet, real. He had never protected someone who knew, with the precision of a person trained in exactly this dynamic, exactly what he was doing and why. The tour resumed in London. She caught him watching her from the wings on the 4th night, not watching the crowd, watching her. He had been doing his job, and then she hit a note in the bridge of a particular song and held it past the point of technical achievement into the territory of something with no professional vocabulary. Something in the space between performance and truth, where the armor briefly became transparent. He stopped watching the crowd. 11 seconds. He returned to it and did not look at her again for the remainder of the show. After walking past him in the O2 corridor, London's cold seeping under the loading bay doors, she said without looking at him, "The 3rd song, bridge section, 12 bars in. You weren't watching the room." He said, "I was watching the room." She said, "No, you were watching me. There's a difference, and you know there is." She walked on without waiting for an answer. He recalibrated. He was very good at recalibrating. The recalibration lasted 9 days. Paris, the George III, 2 in the morning. She came to the lobby in the quiet, anonymous version of herself that Los Angeles almost never got to see. He was there on protocol. She sat by the window and looked at the city, the specific, settled stillness of someone who had learned to find small territories of peace inside the machinery of their own life. After 12 minutes, she said, without turning, "You don't have to stand at the perimeter. I know where you are. You know where I am." He crossed the lobby and sat beside her. Paris moved beyond the glass. She said, "What do you do with it?" "The watching when it's not professional." He said, "I haven't found a satisfactory answer to that question." She said, "That's the most honest thing you've said to me." She said, "You are a professionally precise person. Precision is about accuracy. Honesty is about cost. You are very careful about what things you let cost you." She was looking at Paris. She said, "I learned to do the same. I learned to be precise instead of honest. It's very effective. I recommend it." He said, "You're being honest right now." She turned and looked at him directly. She said, "Yes, and notice how much it's costing me." They sat in that lobby for 40 more minutes without speaking. The Seine 4 minutes away. 2 people who had each, by entirely different routes and at entirely different costs, arrived at the same configuration, present in rooms while remaining unreachable inside them, sat next to each other in one of the most romantic cities on earth, and felt, for reasons neither of them examined that night, slightly less alone. He found it in Amsterdam. A Thursday morning, the gray-lit quality of an Amsterdam morning, canals below his hotel window holding the sky's reflection with the indifference of water that has seen centuries of things people would prefer to keep submerged, buried in the employment records. A discrepancy so small that anyone without 12 years of training in finding things that do not want to be found would have moved past it. A name, Marcus Webb, logistics coordinator, European tour leg, hired 14 months before the first letter at the O2. His record was so clean that Noah looked at it for a long time, because in his experience, records that clean were not the product of blamelessness. They were the product of careful construction. He pulled the original reference. The company name did not exist at the address given, had not existed there for 7 years. The check had been run against a ghost, convincing at a distance, empty on contact, by someone who had known exactly how much scrutiny it would receive. He pulled Marcus Webb's access logs, the O2 in London, the George V florist in Paris, the Amsterdam rehearsal room, cross-referenced against the delivery timeline of every letter. The correlation was perfect, not approximate, not suggestive, perfect. Every letter delivered within a 4-hour window of Webb's logged presence at the relevant location. He knew who was sending the letters. What he did not know, what nothing in the file told him, was why. What connected Marcus to a Thursday evening in November, 6 years ago on Kenmore Avenue in East Hollywood, 4,000 miles from where he was currently sitting? That answer was in her, in the door she had not opened, in the things she had carried alone for 6 years and never once put into words. He was going to have to ask her to open it, and he understood, with the full weight of what he had spent 3 weeks watching, across West Hollywood and London and Paris and now Amsterdam, exactly what that would cost her. He found her on the empty stage of the Ziggo Dome, 2 hours before doors, the Amsterdam crew finishing setup around her. She was sitting at the very edge of the stage, legs over the side, looking at 18,000 seats in pre-show darkness. The specific configuration he had come to understand was her version of the Paris lobby at 2 in the morning, the small territory of peace she had excavated inside the machinery. He sat beside her, not close, the distance of someone who had measured distances his entire adult life, and had, in the last 3 weeks, begun to find those measurements insufficient. He said, "I know who is sending the letters." She went very still. He told her the name. He watched her face and saw something he had not expected. Not fear, not surprise, a weighted recognition, the expression of someone given a name they have not heard, but have somehow, in some corridor of themselves they do not visit, always known was coming. She said, "How long have you known?" He said, 4 hours. She said, "You came directly." He said, "Yes." Below them, a crew member tested a light rig. The beam swept the empty Ziggo floor and disappeared. She said, "I need to tell you about Thursday." He said, "Only what you want to tell me." She said, "I need to tell you all of it. Because the part I haven't told anyone is the part that explains why he's been waiting." She told him. I am not going to tell you what she told him, not because it is not part of the story. It is the center of the story, the hinge on which everything turns. But the telling of it belongs to her, and she gave it to him on that stage in Amsterdam. In giving it to him, she gave something she had never given another living person, the decision to name it, to say it out loud in her own voice, to open the door she had spent 6 years constructing a life around, keeping closed. What I can tell you is what it looked like from the outside when someone who has been carrying something alone for 6 years finally sets it down. It looks like stillness. A person sitting very quietly with very careful hands who has just discovered that what they expected to destroy them, the saying of it, the hearing of it in their own voice did not destroy them. That the world remained, that the person beside them was still present, entirely present, without flinching. He did not flinch. But sitting on that stage in the 2 hours before doors in a city neither of them called home, being trusted with the most locked room in another person's interior life, this required a different kind of steadiness. Not trained. Real. When she finished, he said, "The connection to Webb." She said, "He was there. Not the cause of it. But he was there that Thursday, and he left, and he has spent 6 years deciding what to do with what he saw." Noah said, "He is not going to do anything with it." She said, "You can't promise that." He said, "No, but I can make it irrelevant." She said, "Why does it feel different when you say things?" He said, "Because I have never said a thing to you that I did not mean." She held this in the silence of the empty arena. Then she exhaled, slowly, completely, and the light rig below them tested its full configuration, and for 1 second the entire floor of the Ziggo Dome blazed with it. 18,000 empty seats suddenly lit, and in that second Lyra James looked like exactly what she was, a woman who had been holding something alone for 6 years and had, on an empty stage in Amsterdam, finally found somewhere to put it down. He pulled back the next day. Professionally, precisely. He restructured the detail, ensured coverage across the remaining Amsterdam dates and the return to London, and ensured the coverage was less frequently him. She noticed in 3 hours. She said nothing for 5 days. On the fifth day, somewhere over the Atlantic, flight back to Los Angeles, she sent 4 words. I noticed the distance. He read it at 37,000 feet with Los Angeles still 5 hours away. Read it 3 times, put the phone down, picked it up, put it back. He had spent his entire adult life being clear about the distinction between professional and personal, and was discovering that the distinction had become, across 3 weeks in 3 countries, entirely theoretical. He typed, I am doing my job. She replied in 8 seconds. Your job is proximity. You have chosen distance. Those are professionally incompatible. Try again. He typed, this is the part where I tell you I have not felt anything I could not contain in 12 years, that I built a capacity for compartmentalization I was genuinely proud of, and I am on a plane over the Atlantic and I cannot find the compartment. 90 seconds of silence. Then, when we land, come to Silver Lake. I'll make coffee and you can stop managing yourself at me from a distance. Los Angeles received them at 6 in the morning, the flat, pewter light of a California dawn, not yet decided to be golden. He drove to Silver Lake through streets not yet full of themselves. She made coffee in the kitchen of the Silver Lake apartment, 3rd floor, the same floor as the one on Kenmore Avenue, the details she had never explained to anyone. He sat at her table. Outside, the Hollywood Hills were just becoming visible. She said, you are the first person in 6 years who has seen something unmanaged in me and did not try to use it, fix it, or file it away as a liability. That is not a small thing, and the distance is not about the job. It is about the fact that you have spent 12 years being the person who leaves before leaving costs anything. And this is the first time in 12 years you can feel what it might cost. He said, that is a precise assessment. She said, I'm not a performance. I'm a person. The performance is the thing on top. He said, I know. She said, then stop treating the person the way you treat the performance. He said, if I am going to be genuinely present with you, I need you to understand what that means for the job. She said, I know. I am not asking carelessly. I am a person who has spent 6 years understanding exactly the cost of letting someone in. He said, I know you're not. She said, then be here. Outside, Los Angeles finished assembling itself. The light turned golden. He stayed. Marcus Webb was identified, documented, and removed within 72 hours. Not through confrontation, through the deliberate, methodical construction of a case that left no room for anything but accountability. Noah worked through his former network with the quiet efficiency of a man who had spent 12 years learning how to move through institutions without leaving unnecessary damage. Webb had not intended to hurt her. He had intended to be paid. He had been present on Kenmore Avenue that Thursday, not as a participant, but as a witness to something he understood, even then, had value. He had been patient, watching from a distance as Lyra became famous enough that the knowledge was worth something significant. He had constructed the false employment record, inserted himself into her European tour operation, and sent the letters not as a culmination, but as an opening, the first move in a negotiation he had been preparing for 6 years. The negotiation did not take place. The story Marcus had carried for 6 years, from East Hollywood to the O2 Arena in London, would not be told. Noah had made certain of it, not through threat, but through making the cost of the action higher than any conceivable benefit. She listened to all of it without moving. The Silver Lake apartment was quiet. Through the window, Los Angeles was doing what it does at dusk, turning amber, cinematic, becoming the version of itself that made people forget, temporarily, the cost of living inside it. She said, it's done. He said, yes. She said, thank you. He said, don't. She said, I'll decide what to thank you for. He looked at her across the kitchen table, the small, specific kitchen of a woman who lived more quietly than Los Angeles imagined, and felt the irreversible recognition of a man who has arrived somewhere he did not plan to arrive and has discovered, with the clarity of someone who has stopped watching the door, that the arrival is not a problem. She reached across the table, her hand open, offered, not for anyone watching, because there was no one watching. This was the room without an audience, the version of Lyra James that existed before the stage and after it, waiting with the patience of something that had never stopped being real. He put his hand in hers. Outside, Los Angeles turned gold and then dark. The city did not know what had happened in a third-floor apartment in Silver Lake. It did not know what had been carried home from Amsterdam, or left in Paris, or seen for 11 seconds in the wings of the O2. Los Angeles rarely knows. It is too busy being looked at. Noah Smith spent 12 years learning to watch every door. He knew every exit, every sight line, every position of vulnerability. He had built his professional existence on the principle that safety is a product of vigilance, that if you watch carefully enough, nothing gets through. What 12 years did not teach him, what Lyra James taught him in a West Hollywood conference room, in a Paris lobby, and on a transatlantic flight, and in a Silver Lake kitchen with the Hollywood Hills assembling in the new light, was that there are things worth letting through. That the door you are watching most carefully is sometimes the door you should open. She stands in front of 18,000 people every night and gives them something real inside a constructed thing. She sings the truth of herself through the armor of the performance. Los Angeles taught her visibility. East Hollywood taught her the cost of it. A Thursday in November taught her that being entirely yourself is a luxury with a price. And then a man sat across from her in a West Hollywood conference room and told her, in 17 quiet seconds, what the letters said about her. Not about the threat, but about her. The woman who kept the letters in a jacket rather than a drawer. The difference between what she had been doing for 6 years and what she did in that Silver Lake kitchen, the hand open, offered, no audience, no stage, just the Los Angeles dusk turning amber, is the entire distance between surviving and living. It is not a short distance. For some people, it takes 6 years. For some, 12. For some, it takes a specific room, a specific person who says something true, in a context where true things are rarely said. The person who says the true thing is rarely who you plan for. They arrive when you are occupied with something else, your guard arranged against the anticipated threat, and they come from the direction you are not watching. This is not misfortune. This is, if you are paying attention, the best possible news. Because the armor you built was built against what you already knew. It cannot account for the person in front of you now, who has done nothing wrong, who has not earned the defenses you are aiming at them, who is simply there and present and asking nothing except that you be the same. Be the same. Lyra James still performs to 18,000 people. She still hits every note, holds every silence, gives them the 3 seconds in London and Paris and Amsterdam and every city that has received her without knowing what it was actually receiving. The difference is this: when she walks off stage, into the corridor, into the quiet, specific person she actually is, there is someone there who knows both, who watched 11 seconds in the bridge from the O2 wings and did not look away, who sat in a Paris lobby at 2 in the morning and said, "I haven't found a satisfactory answer to that question," and meant it, who drove to Silver Lake at 6 in the morning after a transatlantic flight because she said, "Be here," and who, in a Silver Lake kitchen with the Hollywood Hills in the window, stopped watching the door. She told me in that quiet register that is not the stage and not the interview. Just her. I spent 6 years performing for people who loved what I gave them. He is the first person who wanted what I was keeping. If this story resonates with you, share it with someone who might need it. Subscribe if you want to be here when the next one arrives. Thank you for watching.